This week, it's been a hard one. The world lost a very special talent. A man that was a big inspiration to me and to countless others. I like to consider myself a movie buff. I've seen a lot of movies in my time. I own a small collection. Most of you that know me have seen it. I couldn't even begin to put a number on the amount of movies I've seen in my life thus far. It all began in 1992. I was 2 years old, and the first movie I ever saw, first full-length motion picture, I should say, was Fern Gully, The Last Rainforest. It was an animated movie. It's barely an hour and a half long, but it had a major impact on me. It was something I had never experienced before. It's funny, the most interesting part of that movie was this really loony character named Batty Coda. What a crazy name. I never understood why they named it that, but he was like this big bat-like, kind of like dinosaur-looking creature. That was mainly the comic relief for what was a pretty deadly serious cartoon movie. The funny thing is, the movie's aimed at kids. Looking back, the whole movie hinges on Batty's humor. If it wasn't for the character of Batty in that movie, the whole affair would be a downtrodden tirade about saving the ecosystem. Fern Gully is a very interesting story, and it's entertaining, but it's not a very entertaining story for young kids, as I was at that point in time. But even as a kid, I found myself going back to the movie for that funny bat guy, never knowing what that was about. I just thought it was so funny at the time. I still kind of do. There was just something so wacky about that character that I just loved. Not even a year later, about a year later, another big animated movie came into my life, and that was Aladdin. God, that was just a ride. I remember seeing it for the first time. I think I saw it in the movie theaters when it came out. I think my mom got me to the movie theaters for that one. The animation was just mind-blowing. The story was enthralling. The music was catchy as hell. Man, I mean, they played the songs on the radio, for Christ's sake. I mean, there's nowhere you couldn't go without seeing that movie. I mean, for God's sakes, I had the fucking Nintendo game. I had it for the Super Nintendo. I still have it. It's a great game. It was just everywhere. What did I enjoy most about that movie was, of course, the genie. The genie was just too much. He was hilarious. I would fast forward to the genie scenes on particular watchings of that movie. I would fast forward. I probably wore out the cassette tape for that, the VHS. But man, it was just too funny. The genie was great. He'd break the fourth wall. He made pop culture references that had absolutely nothing to do with the movie. He was wild. I loved that character. I mean, it's a powerhouse performance, and I didn't even know as a kid that the same man did both parts, both Batty and the genie. I just knew that they were strangely similar, and I loved them. As the years went on, I finally found out who voiced those parts, and the first time I saw that actor in a live-action movie, ironically, he played an actor that does cartoon voiceovers, and it made a lot of sense to me even as a kid. In this movie, not only does he give a heartbreaking performance as a kid, as a father dealing with divorce, and trying to handle that with his 3 kids, but he dresses up as an old woman and watches over them even though he can't be there. On paper it sounds ridiculous, but it ended up being one of my most favorite films of all time. And, Mrs. Doubtfire is now a classic. It literally is a classic film now, and I think it will live on for generations. As a child of divorce, the film always hit very close to home. The ending being very, very hard to get through. I still tear up when I see that ending of that film. Now it's going to be impossible. I don't know how I'm going to get through that now. As the years went on, I went back further and started to watch reruns of Mork and Mindy. I think they were on Nick at Night or something like that. And I watched many episodes with my grandfather. It was one of the few shows that really made him laugh. He would laugh like constantly watching that show. And it's funny, I wouldn't know until years later that's actually a spin-off of Happy Days. I didn't know that. But again, just a great character. Same kind of wild, wacky performance, but just a wonderful, wonderful character. And then there was Toys. A movie that came into my life around the age of 9. It came out many years prior, but it's a weird movie. It's very weird, but the visuals are like no other movie in the world. They still are one of a kind to this day. I think they're very, very impressive, even though the story is kind of a joke. But I love the message that you can be a kid at heart no matter how old you get, and toys are always going to be there as part of childhood. It's just everybody has their toys. I really love that story. And I ended up following the actor through more serious films like Good Will Hunting, which he earned an Oscar. Awakenings, actually, he's on screen with Robert De Niro, and he carries his own with De Niro, which a lot of actors just cannot do. Dead Poet Society inspired me to write when I was in high school. Jumanji, oh my god, Jumanji, when Jumanji came out, they actually had a special on Nickelodeon for the premiere, and I'll never forget, but he was wearing like this really like wild, multicolored sports jacket or something at the premiere. He was always looking like a crazy person, but he did it so well. He always looked so well in those wild outfits. He was great. But it was a large-scale adventure, and again, not much in terms of story with Jumanji, but it was just, the special effects at the time were mind-blowing, and they still look pretty good today. They still hold up. And again, it's just amazing, amazing film. And again, his humor carries the whole movie. And in 2002, I was about 12, and I was still kind of dealing with the tragedy of the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Even though a full year had passed, I wasn't quite sure what to make of what had happened. But he was there to let everybody know that it was going to be okay. His live on Broadway HBO stand-up special, I still think to this day, is the funniest stand-up special that's ever been recorded. Just absolutely hilarious. The whole thing is hilarious. It's very vulgar and nasty. It should not be shown to kids. Don't ask me how I saw it at 12. Somebody slipped up there, but again, it changed the way I looked at comedy. Again, it was just absolutely stupendous. It's just this constant stream of thought that he has that is like no other comedian that's ever been around. Still hasn't been compared to, I don't think. And then his older stand-up specials are just as good, if not better. That's really saying something. And then I saw him in parts that were really challenging, really hard for me to understand that this was the same guy. He played psychopathic killers, in movies like Insomnia with Al Pacino, which is a Christopher Nolan movie before Christopher Nolan really became big, which is a stupendous movie. The movie itself is a remake, but again, just a stupendous performance. And 1 Hour Photo, which is probably one of the creepiest movies I've ever seen in my life. Very off-putting film, but again, a great, great movie. Another, perfect performance. Played a dead man in What Dreams May Come. Again, another very hard movie to get through. And a rapidly aging child in Jack, which also stars one of my other heroes, Bill Cosby, in a great part. Probably the greatest movie Bill Cosby has ever been in. When I say movie, I mean like actual movie where he's acting, not a stand-up movie. Jack gets a lot of flack but I really enjoy that movie, and I think Francis Ford Coppola doesn't get enough credit for it. These were all challenging roles that made me respect him more than ever. He wasn't just a comedic genius, he was a serious talent with a lot of range. He could pretty much do whatever he wanted to, and do it well. And, then I started to learn about things that he did in his spare time. He went overseas to entertain the troops with the USO. He was in Iraq and Afghanistan entertaining the troops year in and year out. Just amazing work. He chartered a private jet for a dying child whose last wish it was to go to Disneyland. He did commercials and raised money for St. Jude's Children's Hospital. Very touching stuff, very touching commercials. Which of course I don't know if they'll be aired now, but he did all this work pro bono. He did not take any endorsement for any of these things, which I think is very, very venerable these days, where everybody's getting money for something. This gentleman did not take any money at all for any of these things, which is incredible. And that leads us to what could stop a person with this much talent, with this much going for him. What could stop him? And the answer, sadly, is himself. He had a constant battle with alcohol and drugs. In the end, he was sober, but as we found out very recently, and I mean recently as in about less than a day ago, that he was in the first stages of Parkinson's disease. And that's a hard disease to deal with. Between that and depression, I guess it was just too much for the man. And I think this loss is going to be felt for a long, long time. I know I'll feel it. This man named for a bird has flown away from us, sadly. And even though I never met him, Robin Williams was a very big part of my life. And it's just so sad to see someone that brought so much happiness to this world leave us so soon. But it's... oh, God. It's, sorry, I'm getting a little teared up here. It's that old adage that rings true. It's that the flame that burns twice as bright only lasts half as long. To my friends that watch this, and to other fans of Robin Williams that see this, thank you. Rest in peace, Robin. You're free. Good night. Nanu Nanu.